So good evening everyone, my name is Pesämaa. I work at the German Center for Neurodegenerative Diseases, and we also have a lot of projects within the Munich cluster for systems neurology, Synergy, which is a sponsor also for this wonderful event. Tonight I'm going to steal 5 minutes of your time to talk about the brain, and the title of my talk is Dear Brain, What's Going On? So I want to start off that you imagine yourself being in a place where you're surrounded by people, for example in the line in the grocery store, or here in the audience, and the person next to you sneezes. Usually we do not find this very pleasant, and that's because we know that this is a way for bacteria and viruses to spread, and they can make us ill. However, luckily for us, our body has an immune system to fight this. But thanks for the wonderful example. But while this fight is going on, we might develop fever, for example, and fever is the perfect example of an inflammatory response. So that's the body making a response against a pathogen in order to fight it. Tonight, I will tell you about inflammatory response in the brain. But before I get started, I want to tell you why this might be interesting for you to listen to. Because this is you, and whether you want to face it or not, you are not getting any younger. And that's true for all of us. We're getting older and older. And inflammation in the brain seems to increase with age, together with diseases such as Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. But what is actually happening then? Let's take a look at the brain. Here is the neuron, the most famous and popular cell type in the brain, and it always steals the spotlight. But it is for a good reason, because this neuron connects to other neurons and make up a signaling network, making it possible for us to do whatever we want to do. But there are also other cells in the brain that support these neurons and make sure that the signaling works. One cell type was long forgotten about and thought to be just a bystander, mainly because it makes up such a small part of the total cell population in the brain. And tonight I want to shift the spotlight to these cells. They are the immune cells of the brain, also known as microglia. Now, these immune cells, or microglia, might not look like a lot to the world. But the cool thing is that they can get activated. And then, well, they still might not look like a lot to the world. And you might wonder, what kind of scribbles and doodles have I been making here? But it's not so far away from the reality. Here are actual images of these. So to the left you can see before activation how these cells have their processes to be able to search the environment to find something bad. And once it finds it, it gets activated and it can eat it. That's what you see here, that these red parts in this cell, it has already been finding something and start to take it in. Interestingly, the activation of these cells has been described to be good, but it has also been described to be bad. And I think we should be careful with calling something bad before we fully understand it. So tonight, to describe these cells, I want to describe them as Pac-Mans. So whenever you see this symbol in my talk, it represents an immune cell of the brain, also known as the microglia. And I choose the Pac-Man simply because these cells like eating. So why would some people then call this bad, these cells? So here we have the famous neural network with a signal going through. And for some reason the immune system has been activated in the brain. For example, because of waste accumulation, which may happen over time. And when the immune system is activated in the brain, so are the immune cells. So these activated microglia, activated immune cells, they can release molecules to the environment which would be toxic for these neurons. And there are even studies suggesting that these activated cells can start nibbling on the connections between neurons. And when a connection is lost, then so is the signal. And whenever we lose a connection or function in the brain due to neuronal loss, we call it neurodegeneration. And this is causing, for example, dementia. This is also why people would want to treat this kind of information and why we consider it to be bad. And now you might think, dear brain, what's going on? Why is this woman telling me that I have bad Pac-Mans in my brain? Well, remember, there was also a good side to it. And we should really consider this. Would the body invent such a function and such a cell if it wasn't any good for us? So here again, we have the famous neural network, and it's working fine. But then something happens without an immune cell being involved. This cell can get injured, or it can even die because of various reasons. And then, luckily for us, we have the immune cells, and once they are activated, these activated microglia can take away part or the whole of this cell. So this can be repaired or fully replaced, and the signal can be restored. So tonight, I have told you about the immune cells of the brain, also known as microglia, and how these cells are being activated. And once they're activated, they can sometimes be bad, but we also know that they are good, and that we will really need this type of activation. So scientists are trying to find out what type of activation in what type of situation would be beneficial or detrimental. And this is also why some people would then want to treat the bad inflammation, maybe even drive back the activation. But I want to emphasize that we should not forget about balance in this case, so that we do not lose the beneficial effect of these cells. And therefore, for example, for my PhD project, I search for markers for different activation states, and I would be happy to discuss this during the breaks. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your 5 minutes, and dear brain, thanks for being more than just neurons.